Hi guys, I've been asked for this comparison more than a few times by now. That would be the Samsung Galaxy S7 against the Sony Xperia Z5. And yes, I know it would make already a lot more sense to compare it with the X Performance, but since that one is not out yet, and a few people still think this one is a great Sony phone, let's just compare them both with each other. Maybe it will sound a little bit biased towards the S7 because it will in the end be quite a significant win in my opinion. But I am prepared for all the backlash from the Sony fans because I still get it and I know it's a great phone. But let's see about that. In terms of design, there is no denying, as we can see here, that the S7 is a lot smaller. We have 5.1 inches against 5.2 inches, but still, look at the difference in terms of width, in terms of height as well. Okay, we have front-facing stereo speakers, but still, in terms of thickness, it's actually pretty close, so all good here. But it's about the in-hand feel. What I always complained about the Z5 are these rough and really sharp edges, and they actually made this a lot better on the Z3 Plus that I also have in for a review, and I will compare the Z5 against the Z3 Plus because I think it's definitely a legit competitor if you maybe want to save a little bit money over the Z5, but this just doesn't make the device feel that great in hand because it feels very sharp and very hard in the hand, and the curve here is also much bigger, so it just doesn't lie as great in the hand, not even as good as the Z3 Plus. Here, of course, the S7 wins because of this amazing curve here, and it feels so nice and compact. One-hand use was way easier. It felt so much more comfortable in the hand. Both feel quite premium, but due to the smooth glass, I just preferred a lot more the milk glass or the matte glass on the Sony. Feels good, but it just doesn't feel as good as a smooth glass. I preferred the smooth glass on the previous Sony device a lot more, and it also is a little bit more slippery, at least in my use. So in terms of buttons here, as we can see, the Sony does a great job with the fingerprint reader, and that one really works well. I had no issues with that like others did. In terms of the position, they're both great. I don't get quite the volume rocker button here at the bottom, but that's okay. We have the dedicated shutter button. But what I do like is that the Sony has all the buttons on one side and not like the S7 here on this side. This is something that I don't like so much. Other than that, you can see the button placement or the port placement is very similar. We have the headphone jack on the bottom where we have it on the top on the Sony, but that's all fine. But in overall, I just think it is the better feeling in-hand device. It's more compact, it feels more premium, but still, the S7 feels nice, or the Z5, but it's the rough edges and the bulky, boxy feel that I don't like so much and makes the device feel bigger than it is. If you just compare the fingerprint reader a little bit, it will be hard for me to get the same timing, but let's just try it. And of course, it will be a hit and miss because I've did this test so many times and it was hard choosing a winner. Sometimes the one turns on faster and sometimes the other one. I think in general the fingerprint reader on the S7 is a little bit quicker, but that's not really noticeable, and I don't think I hit the timing right. So as you can see, the difference isn't that big, so it's quite okay. When we go into the displays though, the difference is, I would like to say way bigger, and it actually is, but for different reasons, because we have the QHD AMOLED display on the S7, where we have a 1080p display only, maybe only, but I don't see this as an only either. So let's get this one out of portrait. In terms of resolution, I should say that the S7 is sharper, but in normal use it doesn't feel at all, because if I'm in a browser or anywhere else, they feel pretty much the same, and I would almost even say due to the IPS display, for some reason I think actually the Z5 seems sharper to me, so there's not a huge difference here. In terms of white, the difference is big though, because as you can see here, I definitely prefer the white on the Z5 a lot better. We also have a white calibration, so a white point calibration point, which I didn't find to be that needed, but what I also just noticed now, that I have some odd clouding on this review unit. I didn't have this on the first one because there's some definite fluctuations in terms of brightness. I'm not quite sure if the camera will be able to pick that up, but as you can see here, there is a shimmer here. So this unit definitely doesn't already have the best screen, but in terms of white, it's absolutely great. The white is okay on the S7 if you don't have the Z5 side by side, because I had that in my review period and I complained about that because I found it way too warm side by side. But if you only use the S7, you get used to it, and then the white is okay, but still it is better on the Z5. The blacks, of course, are better on the S7. We just have perfect AMOLED blacks, but what we have on the Z5 is a little bit of a blue hue, and it's just not nearly as let's say, deep. And what I also noticed, this is something that you won't see here on the light, but we don't have the best viewing angles. So there is a very noticeable IPS glow. And that is actually my main gripe why I didn't want it to go for an IPS display this year, because especially here on the Sony, the IPS glow is more than noticeable and actually a little bit annoying because the blacks just aren't nearly as deep as they could be. Other than that, in terms of colors, if we just quickly compare that, I am absolutely happy with the colors on both. But let's quickly check that. Here we have it in comparison. As you can see, both are really vibrant, both are really colorful, both are... The Sony is a little bit more natural and actually a little bit nicer, saturated, because just not oversaturated, but both do a great job. I think the S5 or the S7 these days actually adds a nice boost of saturation because videos look a little bit warmer, a little bit more nicer to look at. But if you want a more correct screen, besides the not that great black, then I give the win to the Z5. But still, I totally give the overall win in overall experience. I have to give it to the S7 because it overall looks just more pleasing, because the blacks are my main gripe. And not that they are bad, but I've seen a lot of IPS displays with a way better white point. Okay, now, sorry for the confusion here, but let's do this actually this way this time. Okay. Sorry, that isn't working out as great as I wanted it to be. So let's check the sound. Okay, let's try the same here. I hope it is noticeable. So I know there will be a lot of hate for me from the Sony side, because here's the one thing. I had the same issue on the S6 versus the Z3 last year. Personal opinion from me, the S7 is louder. That is a given because I can check the waveform on the editor and I will see it is louder. Of course, the Z5 has the advantage of the front stereo facing speakers, or the stereo front facing speakers, and in games it definitely does a better job because you will have a little bit of a harder time not to block it on the S7, but the overall sound isn't just as great. The maximum volume could be higher. It is mostly good enough, no complaints here, but it just sounds quite flat, a little bit shallow and a little bit tinny. The S7 though sounds very rich, and I really like that because it's a loud and rich sound. So no real complaints, and that's why I can live with the not that great position. But what's the purpose of having front-facing stereo speakers if they don't really sound that loud and if they are a little bit on the flat side? So I had the same discussion on the demo. It could sound, due to the front-facing type, due to the microphone, that the Z5 sounds better, but believe me, I can tell you whatever I want. You won't maybe believe me, but it doesn't feel as great. I've seen a lot of front stereo facing speakers that sound a lot better, like the Nexus 6P, like the Moto X Style and all that, but these are bigger ones, I get that, but the front sound on the Sonys just doesn't sound that good. I've seen the same on the Z3 Plus, Z3, all of them. They sound decent, they sound good enough, but just not loud, definitely not rich enough. And that's why I give the win to this one. So if we compare the performance, and this will be hard because everyone always says my dominant hand gives one the edge over the other. And I'm not even quite sure which one is my dominant hand, because I am a lefty, so it should be the left hand, but I usually use my phone with the right hand, so see it whatever it is. But okay, let's check the performance here. The scrolling, as you can see on the Z5, super nice and smooth, really consistent, absolutely no issues at all, really, really nicely done. On the Z5 though, on the S7, it feels noticeably smoother, the scrolling, definitely lighter, more fluid. Not always that consistent, because I definitely noticed some differences and fluctuations in terms of that. But in terms of browsing performance, I give the definite win to the Z5, because as you can see, super smooth, not the S7 smooth, but still therefore consistent. But on the S7. If it's smooth, as you can see here right now, it is better, but sometimes it just isn't as consistent, so it has a little bit of issues. In terms of multitasking, I would say both are pretty much on the same. The S7 with the 4GB RAM does a very similar job to the Z5. So the overall scrolling is definitely very similar. App launch times are faster, and I can't try to show this off on. Let's open it. Let's see this. So it did launch earlier. Let's try the same here for G+. So in general, I can definitely say it is the faster acting device. It is more snappy, more zippy, but the Z5 is totally great. If you go into the gaming performance though, I give the total win to the Z5 because I am very disappointed in my Exynos version of the S7 in terms of gaming performance. I don't have the highest frame rates in gamings, and it has actually quite some slowdowns. So if my mind doesn't kind of mess me up, I would even say the S6 last year performed better. I'm not quite sure why, but I don't think the S7 is that great of a performer than I initially thought it would be. It should be. Don't get it, so this one wins. In terms of battery life, charge, not quite so sure about because I don't have the values right now. I will post them up, but in general the S7 holds a little bit longer. I would say like half an hour to maybe even an hour longer in terms of screen on time. Also way more efficient in terms of general use, and if you watch a lot of videos, then it's definitely way more efficient because I have I think 13% an hour of YouTube streaming instead of almost 20 here or something like that. So it's definitely the way more efficient device when it comes to videos and in normal use as well. Standby drain is quite good on both. I actually think maybe the Z5 does a better job now also on Lollipop. When it comes to the software, there is a hard time judging because I definitely think by now the S7 is the way more capable device because we have these nice little things here. We have dual window, we have pop-up window, we have definitely all the nice additions we have are really a bonus. And the people that are complaining about the design that TouchWiz looks way too colorful and just not great, just use a theme like this one. This is like blue and black for AMOLED it's called, and this one looks minimalistic, all nice here. If we check the clock here, everything looks neat, so you don't have to use the stock theme and then it will look great. Of course, if you want more stock, then you definitely get it here on the Z5 because this looks way more stockish than anything else, just a little bit themed here, but the overall experience is pretty much exactly the same also here in terms of the quick or the recent apps that are pretty much the same here as well. But if you want the more stockish feel, then it's this one. And if you want the more functional design, more settings, more options, and proper theming engine, it still is the S7. You can tell me what you want, but S7 with this iteration of TouchWiz is better than ever. Now, in terms of camera, I still have to give the overall win to the S7 because the camera on the back is just way better, just way more consistent, and also the video qualities are better. But the Z5 definitely does a better job in terms of selfies. It just looks, in my opinion, way sharper. Transition and all that is bad. Colors look a little bit more, not maybe washed out, maybe more just not that saturated on the Z5. And it still is a good camera, but I said it back then already on the review that it is one of the lower end flagship cameras, and it still holds true. So that's why the S7 gets a win for me. So let's sum it up once real quick because the video is already way too long than I expected. So design and build quality, definitely the S7. I can't turn this any way other around. The display still gets the S7 because it is overall the way better display. Sound gets also the win for the S7 because it sounds way richer, way louder. Can't deny that. In terms of performance, if you play a lot of games, then it could be the Z5. Keep in mind there will be some throttling, but not really that much to consider. I didn't really bother about it. It gets definitely warmer in normal use, but still totally fine. If you want a more consistent feeling device, then it is still the Z5, but if you want the if greater or if better, then way smoother, way snappier, and still overall better performer, in my opinion, is the S7. Yes, I would wish for a little bit more consistency like we have on the Z5, but it's so rare that it lags a little bit, or it stutters a little bit, or maybe it doesn't perform on its best level, but the ways or the moments that it does, which are still dominant, it is way better. So, battery life, I would say half an hour to maybe an hour more of screen on time on the S7, so gets the win here. And in terms of software, I give the win to the way more functional, but still also this time great looking OS, the S7. Camera, also S7. So I get it. If you are a Sony fanboy, you will hate me for this video, because I think in pretty much every category the S7 won. Which doesn't say the Z5 is bad, but I think they actually went the wrong way with the Z5. It doesn't feel as good as the Z3 Plus did last year. It doesn't have the great battery life, for example, of the Z3 anymore. The display is better than ever, so no complaints at all. Even though the Z3 Plus already had a great display, the sound definitely has to become richer in the future and also louder. Performance, no complaints here, does a really great job. The camera does a very good, solid job, but just isn't on the best flagship level. So I get it. If you hate me for this comparison, I know it is very one-sided, and maybe the Sony Xperia X performance will get it closer, maybe even win. I can say I haven't seen it yet, I haven't tried it yet, and I will definitely try to get that comparison done as early as it is. But as for right now, for the current price, for what it is, the Z5 does a solid job. And it still is a legit flagship, and I've called it one of the best normal-sized phones back in my best of video. But the S7 did such a huge leap from last year that this one just can't overall compete. Still a great phone, but not nearly as great as this. So I am done. I've said all I wanted to. Maybe I forgot something, and if I did, you can leave that in the comments, and if you have any questions, leave them as well there. Other than that, if you liked it, give it a thumbs up, and if you are a Sony user, you will definitely give it a dislike. I can completely understand that, but it is like it is. And it is not just the fact that the S7 is my daily driver, because I've used the Sony Z3 for 1.5 years, and I definitely love Sony, but I can only give it so much credit it deserves. So yeah, if you want to see more content like this, subscribe to the channel. Until next time, bye.